Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to welcome this morning's keynote speaker from the headline sponsors of this conference, Cadent, Dr. Tony Ballance.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As we just heard, today is about practical things to make hydrogen happen. And there are heaps of great speakers after me who are going to tackle this subject from a number of different angles. And my colleague Angie Needle yesterday talked about the consumer angle with a shopping bag of products. So if you haven't seen it, it's really worth checking out. And products that UK consumers love that are made right here in the UK and are ultimately going to need hydrogen to produce them. Now, I want to carry on this important train of thought about consumers by being a little bit provocative this morning with a focus on hydrogen for heating. So you might ask, why have I put this slide up? Well, I do like Venn diagrams. You know, when you're at school, it's one of those lessons that actually stays with you and becomes quite useful later in life. And this is a picture that was taken from our Greenprint Future Heat for Everyone document that we produced a couple of years ago. And what this tries to draw out is that the solution for hydrogen for heating in particular will be a combination of technical and safety issues, economics, and critically, consumer wants and preferences. It's not just about physics and economics. And I really do roll my eyes when the engineers tell me it's all about physics. That will determine the outcome. And as an economist, I can honestly say that economics can be the so-called dismal science, and it has often been referred to that in the past. So we need economics where people matter. And a lot of behavioral science work has bled into the economics profession, which is a good thing. So what is it that customers and consumers are saying, which of course reflects the situation that they often find themselves in of being without much money? Now, we've been doing quite a bit of work with Think's Insight Strategy, formerly Britain Thinks, and Matt and Lucy are with me on a panel upstairs for the lunchtime session, which hopefully will kind of dig into the kind of behavioural stuff a little bit more. And we've been working with them since last year on an Energy Diaries series and now a Sustainability Diaries series to engage with consumers and really get behind what they're concerned about and critically how they see sustainability. And from the work we've completed recently, there are a number of key takeaways. Firstly, consumers are time poor and not really engaged in technical solutions, things like smart meters and information like studying their bills and trying to understand what to do. They've limited knowledge and don't really know where to get knowledge from. And there are real financial barriers to pursuing sustainable solutions. So sustainability is held back. And most, around 80%, want energy companies to take the lead on sustainability as they are seen to have the expertise. Now, in our discussions, the point was also made that the trigger for the majority of heating replacements is when a person's heating system breaks down. And therefore, any change we might want to compel needs to really face into that issue. And I'm going to return to the issue of change and choice later. So in terms of other consumer insight work that I've looked at over the past couple of years, firstly in relation to awareness and general support for net zero, YouGov found that 3/4 of the public expressed concerns about climate change at the beginning of 2020, and Citizens Advice found that 7 in 10 people are aware of the 2050 net zero target, and over 80% actually support the goal to reach it by 2050. So support for doing something about net zero and sustainability. But in relation to heating solutions, the Citizens Advice report, taking the temperature, and I'd encourage anybody to read that report who hasn't, found unsurprisingly that people want a warm and comfortable home that is affordable, reliable and responsive. They like what they have today. So in relation to customers' willingness to change their current heating systems, we did some work a while back with Bright Blue, and their Going Greener research showed critically that while the UK public say they accept the need for change, and indeed they support the net zero targets, only 16% think that natural gas heating is a very significant contributor to climate change. So we have a challenge. So you can hopefully see a bit of a pattern emerging from what I've just said. So I read with interest recently the Nesta research on heat pumps, which showed high levels of satisfaction with heat pumps. 73% or so of the 2,000 or so people surveyed were as or more satisfied compared with their previous heating system. And this was accompanied by the usual fanfare of heat pumps are the solution to home heating. But there still remained 1/5 of people who were dissatisfied from a group that are generally the wealthiest and what you might call environmentally invested people in society. And in many cases had previously had oil boilers, LPG and electric heaters. And just over half of the heat pump installations involved replacing the entire heating system in a home. So there is a group of consumers out there who are prepared to switch to a new technology, and most are satisfied. But these customers, I would contend, from my understanding of customer segmentation, are typically the segment that are early adopters and likely to be keen to experiment with new technology, and critically, they can afford it. Now, we wanted to touch briefly on the proposed Hydrogen Village trial in Whitby and Ellesmere Port that we have been looking at, which has really informed our view on consumers and on choice in particular. Now, I suspect many, if not most of you, might be aware that we changed tack on our proposal to ensure we could propose something that customers might ultimately support. And I'll return to what we did in a minute. Now, our original proposal would have resulted in forced participation to have hydrogen, or change to say having a heat pump if you didn't want to have hydrogen. But you had to move away from your current natural gas system. And we didn't feel that was right, and consumers rightly had concerns which we listened to. Those not wanting to participate sought opposing views to support their cause from elsewhere, which fueled this whole anti-campaign. And the anti-hydrogen lobby literally came to town. And they've now tried to do this in Redcar, the other proposal from NGN, and fortunately they're to no avail. Even so, we learned a great deal and changed our approach accordingly, because listening and responding to customers was absolutely key. Now, the main thing we learned through this process was the need to offer choice. And most vocal residents, around 40%, showed concerns over the trial being forced on the community, whereas in national research, only 15% of residents showed this to be a concern. Now, what this is an indicator of is the so-called say-do gap, where decisions are influenced when it comes to it actually being your home that is impacted. Residents will, as you might expect, then change their minds. We also learned that any societal benefits, whilst initially were really important, ultimately took second stage. So we needed to change our approach, as customer support was always going to be a key component of any successful trial, and our board simply would not support a trial that would not take customers along. And so a key part of our change of tack was choice, by laying a new duplicate mains which customers would be connected to for methane, or they could opt to switch onto hydrogen through the existing mains. And this was taken from a trip that my colleagues made to Lochem in the east of Netherlands, where 11 properties there have voluntarily gone down this route. So in essence, we looked at that and thought this was a jolly good idea for what we might do in Whitby. So now we've changed tack, what are consumers saying? Well, given the new proposition, customers are now much more supportive. There's been lots of visitors to our Hydrogen Experience Centre there in Whitby, and guess what one of the most used words is? You guessed it, choice. They like the choice that they now have. So what do we conclude from all of this to guide our thinking on the transition to decarbonising heating? Change is going to be really hard, and as I said earlier, needs to be factored into future planning. Now, that is not to say that consumers' behaviour can't and will need to change, as it may not be possible to give them exactly what they have today. And heat pumps are a brilliant piece of technology that, working in the right housing stock, provide a very efficient and effective and different source of energy to the home. And for many, that will be the right solution for them to choose. And we've seen the satisfaction levels can be high for that technology. But critically, in all the future models and scenarios, we simply can't assume that customers' behaviour will change and that they choose to make big changes out of a normal replacement cycle. Now, I heard one very senior energy person say recently that we know we need better insulation in homes, so let's just assume that in determining the right solutions for home heating. He was not, of course, a fan of hydrogen. Well, good luck with that, I thought, with 60% of properties at EPC rating of D or below, and the failure of the Green Home grants illustrate that change is not straightforward to elicit. You might also look at the failure of the smart meter rollout, with the NAO reporting yesterday and the chair of the PAC, Meg Hillier, making the point that 10 years after it was due to complete, that over 40% of homes are still not on a smart meter and 10% of them are not working. So one last thought. When you decide to impose change of this kind, it can crystallize opposition to the very thing you're trying to push forward. In Germany, the threat of banning gas boilers to pursue green policies as part of their new coalition government has caused the much-admired Green Party there, who were leading the economy ministry, to be less popular than the far right. A pretty sad state of affairs. Now, I heard yesterday that hydrogen-ready boilers will be allowed essentially as renewable technology in Germany, and quite literally, that has taken the heat out of the debate there, but not out of people's homes. And that is, of course, the way we should go here, to keep options open and critically allow a lot of people to participate in delivering net zero by installing hydrogen-ready boilers, rather than trying to persuade or compel 22 million people to remove their gas boilers. We, after all, want to avoid a so-called heat hammer here. Thank you.